Everybody get their little notice that says we're recording. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I know I spoke with a lot of you yesterday at our forum, so welcome back. Today we have part 2 of our quick tips series with Brenda Hough. And we did quick tips for project management last month, and that is recorded and in the Niche Academy, or if it's not in the Niche Academy, we'll figure out how to put it there now that we have Amy on staff. Brenda has come back to us today to do quick tips for time management, and she's going to be our facilitator, and I am just going to turn it over to her and give her as much time as she needs.
All right. Thank you, Sharon. So as Sharon said, I'm Brenda Hough. I currently work at the Topeka and Shawnee County Public Library. I'm the staff development coordinator here. And in 2018, I published a book called Crash Course in Time Management for Library Staff. And I would say that prior to 2018, prior to 2010, if you had told me that I was going to publish a book on time management, that would have been very surprising. But I think what often leads people to become interested in time management techniques, it can be a change. So maybe a change in your life. For me, it was my son was born in 2010. And I felt crunched like I never had before. I think I, prior to that, had been getting a lot done, but I was also doing a lot of working late or kind of cramming before an event or before something was due. And I just couldn't do that anymore. And so I turn to time management. I see people also, it can be if you have a new position. So maybe you went from one position or you became a director, or it can also be something changing in your life outside of work, like it was for me. So maybe that's having a kid, or maybe it's a relative, you're having to take on more of a caretaker role, just lots of things. But sometimes it's things going on with your own health, whether that's physical or mental health, and you just realize that you want and need to make a change. But anyway, so this is what happened to me, is that I started to get really focused on time management, and I started doing a lot of reading, trying to figure out techniques that could help. These are some of the things that stuck, and I'm going to talk more about these. Getting things done is one that I really like and pull a lot from. Atomic Habits, really, it's the gist of that one that I like, that I think often when we are wanting to make changes, we think we need to do a huge overhaul, change everything. And instead, what this book emphasizes is that little tiny changes can make a big difference. And so that really resonated with me. Pomodoro technique is one that I'll talk about. I also think I was really influenced by things like Brene Brown, and the woman on the right is Christine Carter, who works for something called the Happiness Project. And so she was writing about the stress and wanting to just feel better about what I was getting done. And so I wasn't really, it wasn't enough just to focus on productivity for me. It was also about just wanting to feel better about what I was getting done and how I was managing my time. And then I also started, both formally and informally, talking to a lot of people who work in libraries. I did some surveys and got input that way. Every time I was teaching this or doing a presentation on time management, I was just hearing lots of examples, because I think there are some things about working in a library that are different than a lot of the people who are reading these books. For example, many people have an office job or a desk job, where that's different than a job where you have the public, where you need to work at the circ desk or you need to respond to questions from the public. And that makes up a huge part of your of your day and the time that you spend. So it was useful to me to get that input from people working in libraries, and I'll share some of that as I go too. So time management is something that all of us have been doing for our whole lives in different ways. And so a lot of this, it's not going to be earth-shattering. It will be sometimes things that you're already doing, but I hope that you find at least one thing that you'd like to try. And then I also hope that you find something that you would like to share with someone else. And that's one of the big things that I emphasize with time management is the more we can talk about it, the better. So whether that's people that you supervise and giving them tips on time management, or it's just talking about it with others on your staff, on the staff at your library, I think when we talk about it, we create a culture where we're supporting one another and we can better understand and support one another. And I'll talk about that with some of the specific examples. So we're going to look at a whole variety of time management tools and strategies. Some of them you hopefully will like and want to try. Some of them you will probably not want to try. And I think some of them I don't like. I'm sharing some of them are ones that I know from working with other people. They really like them and they really work, but it wasn't for me. So, and again, having those discussions, talking about it, I think this can be a start to that. And the place where it starts, like with so many things, I think, is self-awareness, kind of knowing what I think we all come to this with some degree of self-awareness about this, but if we can get more specific and granular with how we're managing our self-awareness around how we're managing our time, I think that can be really helpful and it can help us see how and where to change. We're each unique and our personalities impact things, our situations impact things. And so self-awareness is where it starts. And one of the tools that can be used to gain that self-awareness is time tracking. Has anyone tried or does anyone regularly do this? It really is just keeping track of how you're spending your time. Yes, Linda, good. Anybody else tried this?
I made my
Linda's
staff do it, so we have
okay.
to for
Oh,
work. But yeah,
good. Yeah. Well, I know from every time I teach this, so I often teach this as a 4-week class, and so I always start with it, having everyone try it for at least a few days. And it can be as simple as taking a piece of paper and just jotting down, whether in half-hour increments or whatever works, what you do in that time. And I know from having people do this that some people really like it and find it very useful, and other people it just drives them crazy and feels like it slows them down. But I do think it can be really helpful for that self-awareness, realizing how you're spending your time, realizing where it's going. And so Sharon said she has a forum she can share, and there are lots of them on the internet. It's easy just to create one. Sometimes people just use a legal pad and just jot things down. But I think it can be really useful. There's also software. Toggle is a tool that you can use. I find, unless you're going to get really serious with it, I think that to me, it's easier just to jot it down on a piece of paper. But if you're maybe a different generation or just more use your phone more than I do, Toggle is a tool and there are lots of them out there, but just really tracking how you use your time. And I think it's useful not only to notice what you do, but also if you notice your energy level, if you track a little bit about how you feel about what you're doing, that can be useful too. One thing that it can help is it can help you identify your rhythms. And there's a book by Daniel Pink that I love. And if you are interested in this topic like I am, time and how we use time, this book, Win by Daniel Pink, is all about timing and how it affects so many things in our life. And he focuses on a lot of research. For one of the examples that sticks with me, that little baby from the first picture is now a high school student. And so he talks about how so many high schools classes start like at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning. And if you know high school students, for a lot of them, that is a real stretch. And so he's talked about places where they've experimented with high school start times being later and how effective that was. So one of the thing that's on this slide is he talks about how we have we're different with this, we're unique with this, and our own flow of energy throughout the day, both mental, our ability to focus, and our just overall energy. I became aware of this when I was trying to do the New York Times crossword puzzle. And I would find that if I would try to do it often in the evening and hardly get anywhere, but then I would look at the same puzzle the next day, and it was like a bunch of them I was like, how could I not have figured that out last night? And it's just our brains are different at different times of the day. So the three types that he's identified are larks. I think early birds, we're familiar with that. And then owls or night owls, I think that's familiar to us too. But then there's also something called third birds. And that's actually the majority of us. And this is definitely me. My best time to work on something that requires some focus or is like 10 o'clock in the morning. And that third bird, kind of the sweet spot for third birds is 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Where for early birds, it's like 4 a.m. to 8, I think. And then for the night owls, it's often 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. But again, this can be unique. But one of the things time tracking can do is to help you sort of realize your own flow with that. And again, some of you may intuitively know that, and this is the kind of thing that can change throughout your life. So when you're in high school, often they're night owls, and then that goes back to being larks, maybe when they're in their 20s or later. So it can change. A lot of things you don't have control over just because you know your energy level is not good at a certain time. You probably still have to work during that time. But if you can shift sometimes what you're doing at different times. So let's say you go make a deposit at the bank every day. If you are someone who's really good mentally from 8 to 11, I wouldn't waste that time if you have flexibility with it on that errand at that time, but maybe do that in the afternoon when your brain isn't as sharp, or then save that for those more rote tasks. So that's one of the things that I think is interesting that you can get from tracking your time. So I'm curious, how many of you think you're a lark? How many are an owl? And how many are third birds like me? I'm a third bird. A fourth bird? Okay. Yeah, Amy, that's almost a night owl, but Sharon is an owl. Ginny, yep.
It
Yeah,
depends on what I'm doing, what I am.
uh-huh.
Work, I'm an owl. Otherwise, I'm a lark, I think.
Okay. Yep.
Paperwork and such.
Yeah. Okay, we're all over. Yep. Depends on the day.
Well, that's
So
why I
it's
love
just,
that flexibility of time. If I need to work the night shift, so that's when I can
yes,
focus, then having
yes.
that flex time is really helpful.
Yeah, that's right. And knowing it about other people too. Again, you can't just know that someone's an owl, so then when they come in, you have no expectations of them, but you can kind of shift your expectations or shift the tasks sometimes. So it's interesting to me. I think it's really important, and it's at the core of things, timing, but we often are less aware of it, I think. Another thing that time tracking can do is to help you more accurately estimate how long things will take. And this, if you were in the project management session, that's really important, is that as we're trying to manage our time, we have to have that ability to estimate how long we need to set aside for certain things. So, for example, I remember someone who was talking about that he was planning computer training, and once he started time tracking, he realized that he had been underestimating how long it took him to prepare those classes, and that he needed to make some changes so that he wasn't feeling totally stressed out by the classes, that he needed to get more realistic about how much prep time he needed. And then I also remember a director who talked about when she was tracking time, she realized how her board report that she had to write every month and always dreaded and put off and felt stressed about, that she realized that when she tracked how long it actually took her, it took her like half an hour to write it if she had things organized so she could pull them together. And so realizing that helped her just get it done, which is one of the techniques we're going to talk about. But knowing how long things will take. And then I think a side benefit of that is that we are able to be more realistic about, do I have time for that? Because often I think if you're like me, have a tendency to say yes or to get excited about new possibilities, new projects without really realizing how many hours is this going to take and how does that look in my calendar. So this is one I feel like I've worked on a lot myself and I'm trying to get better at, is being realistic about my capacity. Paying attention to your energy level. We talked about that a little bit already, so you can, as much as you can, adapt your tasks to a better time of the day. I think noticing your emotions around different activities is interesting too. So sometimes if there's something that we don't like, we avoid it, which makes sense, of course, but if we realize that we avoid it, and we can spend more time dreading something or putting it off and then kind of thinking about that we should be doing it, where if we actually just do it, it wouldn't take us that long to do. So these are the sorts of things, and I think it's part of why time tracking is sometimes hard, is because we realize that we sometimes just have to get things done instead of putting them off. So I always have, when I teach the 4-week class, I always have students do this pre-assessment. And these are almost always people who are actually working in libraries. And one of the things that I have noticed so frequently, the first two questions, the first question is, I have them rank this on 1 to 5, a Likert scale. I don't have time to do everything that I need to do. And then the second question is, I often miss deadlines or need to ask for extensions. So I have them rank themselves on both of those things. And did this move? Let's see. Yes. What I see so frequently is that people will say 5. Yes, I don't have time to do everything I need to do. Yet on number 2, they're not needing to ask for extensions or missing deadlines. So to me, this is some of the overwhelm and stress that I think are so common in libraries, is that we are doing so much, maybe too much sometimes, and at the cost of our own sense of well-being. We're overdoing it. We're overestimating how much we can do. So I'm not sure if that resonates for you, but it's certainly a pattern that I have noticed over time. So time management tools, common ones, of course, are calendars. And many of us, if we think about it, we have several calendars that we use. I think the most I've ever heard someone say that they use is, I think it was 10 or 11 between, she had a calendar, online digital calendar for work, and then she also used a paper calendar, and then some calendars with her family. So we often have lots of calendars. And then clocks, of course. So setting timers for ourselves, alarms that wake us up, alarms to remind us of things. Clocks are common tools, but another common tool is the to-do list. And this is always interesting. So how many of you use a to-do list or create to-do lists? And if you do, what do you do? Post-it note, app on your phone? I'm curious if you would share in the chat, if you do a to-do list, what's your format for those? Good. Sharon has a form. Ginny has something on her phone. Multiple post-it notes. Ooh, old card catalog cards. That's fun. Paper form, post-its. Yeah, so some form of to-do list, and I think they are great. A lot of people I work with have a notebook that they keep, and they just write a page a day in there, so then they can refer back to things. So this is what I think it's always an interesting question, and something you might ask others you work with is just, what does your to-do list look like? How do you track things in there? We're all very different about this. A very messy handwritten list. Yes. So this to-do lists, again, lots of different forms. Post-it notes, notepads, multiple post-it notes. I often see that one. So one of the things, when we have all of those to-do lists, I think one of the things is then to think about when and how we're going to get those tasks done. And so something that I think can be powerful is to start, so get them out, get them into the to-do list form, but then also start looking at where can you do them in your calendar? Where will you have time for that? And this is something that I've been trying to do, is to put them in my calendar, to set aside, not just to use my calendar for meetings and things where I'm meeting up with someone else, but also setting aside this time for working on things. And I find that I often move things, but it somehow helps me stay more aware of how much time I actually have available to get things done. All right, let's start talking about some tools. Okay. Oh, just other trends I was going to mention from working with people in libraries and talking with people who work in libraries is the distractions and interruptions. I think that that's probably a problem everywhere, but in libraries, I think it's really a challenge. And in part, that's because of the nature of our work, that a priority always needs to be responsive to the business of the library, the things that are happening, customers having needs, that kind of thing. But I think also I have talked to a lot of directors, for example, who feel bad about shutting their door if they have an office. They feel bad about shutting their door, or they feel bad about setting, telling people that they don't really want to be interrupted unless it's emergency. And I think that that's actually one of the benefits that can come from talking about time management together, is that we do need that time for focus. And if we can help each other get that time when we need it, that can be a really powerful thing. And another thing that I see is that we all often in libraries are very action focused, very much on to the next thing. And so sometimes we're not taking that time for reflection, or kind of slowing down a bit to, I think we can learn from reflection and it can help make things better the next time, but often we're just we just keep rolling ahead without taking time for that. And I know lots of people do reflection, but overall it's just a trend that I've noticed. So okay, so this is where I'm going to talk about some of the tools. And again, some of these are ones that I personally have found very impactful. Some of them are ones that I don't personally find as useful, but I have heard enough people tell me that they are, that I include them. So the first one that I'll share is the Pomodoro technique. And this is the tomato timer. That's the Pomodoro, is the tomato timer. But this is one of the things overall in society, and definitely in libraries, but I think overall in societies, is that focus is a real challenge. It's really hard to focus for a certain period of time. And so this technique, it really does just have you use a timer. Most people don't want to use the actual tomato timer because they don't want to ding. They don't want to have a tomato ticking, but it can be just using your phone, some form of timer. There's a website called tomatotimer.com, and that also will do this. But what you do is you set your timer for 25 minutes. Excuse me. So you set an intention first. What is this thing that you're going to focus on? And then you set your timer for 25 minutes and you just focus on just that thing. You don't respond to email, you don't check your phone, you don't do anything else. You just focus on that thing. When the alarm goes off, then you take a 5-minute break and then you do it again. And so you're supposed to do this 4 times, then take a longer break. Because one of the things that people will sometimes do is go too hard on something. So they realize that it's been like 2 hours and they haven't looked up from their computer. So this can help with that too. But I'm curious, has anyone tried this, the Pomodoro technique? Yes. Some people yes, Amy says I got it through library school. Good. Some people like this one, or where they first see the impact of it is at home with housework, because you can do a lot in 25 minutes and often it's the kind of stuff where we kind of are dreading or don't really want to do, but if we just 25 minutes seems achievable. So this can work for that. But I think what people often say, I don't know if they even get through 4 25-minute cycles. It's really just that one 25-minute cycle is surprising to people. They're often surprised by how much they can get done if they really force themselves to just focus on one task for 25 minutes. So I would say, from doing this now with hundreds of people working in libraries, that this is the one that feels like it really is the most practical, easy, can make a big change sort of tool. 25 minutes where you get yourself to focus. And it's also the kind of thing that if, for example, one of your challenges is that you often have people stopping by your desk, or you're trying to focus on something, but they want to ask you a question. If you can talk about time management and just then either put up some sort of visual that says you're doing a Pomodoro, or just as they stop by, you can just say, hey, I'm doing a Pomodoro. Can I check back in with you on that once I'm done with this? It just helps establish that sometimes we need to have, whether it's 25 minutes or 100 minutes, that yes, it sets up that boundary. It sets the expectation. It's a way that we can support each other. If I see that someone has a sign on their door that says focus time, I'm a lot of the time I can come back. So of course, you'd probably want to make it clear that if there's an emergency, that kind of thing, that you can be interrupted. But I think overall, just 25 minutes can be a really powerful thing. Okay, this one is named for Eisenhower, great planner, decision maker. some very big things going on. So this is a way of looking at how you're spending your time and making decisions about how you're going to spend your time. When I teach the class, I have people look at their time log that they kept, where they tracked how they kept their time, how they spent their time, and then have them think about this. Where does it fit in this matrix? So let's go through this matrix. And again, the purpose is to help you kind of prioritize your tasks, get clear about your priorities. So it's a quadrant, and at the top you can see urgency, and the things on the left are urgent, the things on the right are not urgent. And then you can also see on the left, you can see importance. So at the top is urgency, at the left is importance, and things in the top row are important and things in the bottom row are not. So examples of things that are important and urgent would be pot boiling over, crying baby, your crying baby needs your attention, needs you to take care of them. In the library context, it could be upset patron, fire alarm going off, all things like that. So things that are urgent and things that are important for you to take care of too. Things that you must address. In the bottom, so those are things that are urgent, but they're not important. And usually what that means is that there's someone else's important. What's a good example of this? So if someone keeps kind of pulling you into their stuff, there's something that they need to be working on, and yet they keep pulling you into it. This can take up a lot of our time. So, and we want to help other people. I think that's a good natural thing, but within reason. Again, like Sharon said, the boundaries. I think realizing that at a certain point, is there training that someone needs? Do they just need encouragement to feel like they can do the thing on their own? Do they need to somehow for you to set the boundary that's establishes that you're not going to engage with them around that, but that's their thing and that you have your things. This one I think is can be tricky and challenging, but I also think it's important to recognize when we are getting pulled into somebody else's important a lot. The stuff in the top right quadrant, so stuff that's not urgent, stuff that's important, sometimes you'll see that called the schedule it quadrant, and it's where we can focus on important things. It's when you can plan and make progress on projects. And this, in time management, this is considered the sweet spot. When you feel like you have a plan, you're working on that plan, you're working towards your goals and the things that are important for you, the things that are a priority, but it doesn't have that emergency feel or that urgency where this needs to be taken care of right now. So when we're in that top right quadrant, that's when we feel productive. That's when we feel like we're getting things done. And then the lower right quadrant, this is not important, not urgent. That can be things like, I don't know, looking at social media or things that could be considered time wasters, chit chat that's not about work. It's not that we should never do this because that's how we have relationships with other people, or it can be how we give our brain a break is to spend some time there, that kind of thing. So, but just being aware as we look at our tasks and what we're doing, being aware of how we're spending our time. I think that people have talked about that top left quadrant, the urgent and important, that there's something kind of addictive about that. So we can find ourselves, it feels important. It is important what you're doing there. And there's a sense of that can be addictive. So we sometimes, instead of like getting processes in place or doing some of the things that would help so we spent less time with things being urgent, that it would probably be better overall. Because what can happen is if you spend too much time in that top left in the urgent and important, that's when you could get to burnout. So for a while, it can feel like kind of exciting, like you're doing important things. But if you spend too much time there, that's when you can start to burn out. Same thing with the bottom left. That's where I think you can start to feel frustrated, feel like you don't have control of your time, is if you're too much getting pulled into other people's stuff often. So again, that top right sweet spot, that's where things are going according to plan. We're making progress on our goals. And according to time management experts, that's where we feel good. We feel good about our time management when we spend time there. Any thoughts on what percentage of your time you think you spend in that sweet spot?
Certainly not as much as I should,
Yeah.
but
One of the things that I realized about myself is just how much I like to spend time there. And I try to help myself structure things so that I can spend time there. But I think in libraries, especially if you have a job where my job now, I don't interact with the public. I'm just working with staff. And so I don't have as much of the top left, but I think when you do work with the public, that just nature of the work, I think, can be to spend time there. So this isn't something that I actually map out very much for myself anymore, but I do think about it. And it's a way that I now frame things as new things are coming at me, or as I'm looking at what's working, what's not. I think about this. I think about where am I spending my time and what's working or not working. All right, so that's Eisenhower. Time boxing is setting aside a certain amount of time to a designated activity and then really trying to get it done in that time. So one of the things I said earlier is that I'm trying to take my to-do list and actually plug it into my calendar, and then actually sticking to that time that I set aside for it. So there are certain tasks, that are like a goldfish, where writing an article for a newsletter or a post for the website, you could spend, 3 hours on that, but what is it really only worth half an hour? So then really getting yourself to kind of get in there and do what you can in half an hour. This is something, if you supervise other people, this can be helpful too, is to give them what's a good estimate for how long it should take to do a certain task, so that they sort of know. And it can be complicated or challenging to do that, but if you feel like someone is spending too long on something because they're trying to make it perfect, where it should be done in a shorter amount of time, where it's pretty good, that can be good for people to know, and they might not realize it. So time boxing, for me, has been really useful. There's all kinds of stuff from how good is good enough. I think it depends on the thing. I think that like writing an article, how good is good enough? I think a lot of times the stuff that we do to make something, we can get caught up in our own doubts or overthinking things. And so sometimes if you just get it out there, and then you're done.
well,
Instead
and we
of
talk about that. So like, how good is good enough? Think about that before you start. Is this something
mm-hmm.
that's perfect, or is this something that you just need to get it done? And that way you can
Yeah.
go, oh, okay, it doesn't have
Yes,
to be perfect.
bites of the elephant. That's right. Okay. So getting things done is really a useful book. And Sharon has a resource page that I put together. You can also look at his website. But if I have not adopted the whole system, but he has many little tidbits that I find very useful. And one of them is his 2-minute rule. So if something is going to take less than 2 minutes, just do it. And if you are like, well, I have so many 2-minute things that I could spend my whole day doing, well, then it might not be as effective for you. But I find that like with email, if someone sends me an email and I can quickly reply, it's often better for me just to do that rather than to put it into my to-do list to do later. So the 2-minute rule I think is really useful. Do it when it crosses your plate. But his other big thing, and this we talked about in project management too, is getting things out of your head and into your system. So for example, that we use the example of a director needing to write a board report. If he or she has a folder or a document, even a running document, and as things come up throughout the month that they think, oh, that would be good to include in my report, having that document, so then right at that moment, you can put it into the document, get it out of your head and into your system, that can be really useful. So when I think that's why people also have like those notebooks or journals that they carry with them, is that they can jot it down, because there's a lot of stress that goes with trying to hold things in your head. You're worried that you'll forget it, and we often do forget it. So just having that some way to capture those things, so then later when you have time, you can put it where it goes, I think is very useful. So that's another getting things done technique. This is one of the ones that some people really love, and it doesn't, this is one, I don't know if it's that I don't like frogs but there's a Mark Twain quote that this comes from: eat a live frog first thing in the morning, and nothing worse will happen to you the rest of the day. So it's, instead of putting off the thing that we don't want to do it. Just do that thing right away. Get it off your plate. Focus on the most important thing first. And especially if it's one of those things that we kind of keep pushing off because it's a little hard or a little bit unclear or just not something we're excited to do that thing. So that's the eat that frog technique. Let's see. Oh, this is more from Getting Things Done. So he's big into that reflection piece that we talked about, that I feel like a lot of people working in libraries don't feel like they're doing as much as they would like, is taking some time, instead of just in the moment kind of dealing with whatever is coming, to take time to reflect. So he recommends both a weekly review, where you go out and you look through the past week and what did you accomplish, look at the week ahead, and then what do you need to accomplish. Go through things that are in that inbox, whether that's a notebook where you've been jotting things down or your to-do list that's in another form. Go through that. Just kind of look everything over and do that on a weekly basis. And then from that, put together your schedule. Maybe identify some of those chunks that you want to schedule time in your calendar for. Do that kind of thing. Set up meetings that you need to set up. Check in with people. He also emphasizes a daily review. And I know some people like to do this in the morning. So they get there and then they go through, they create maybe a Post-it note with their top priorities for the day, or meetings that they have, different things that are going to help them frame their day. Other people like to do it at the end of the day. So take a look at what you did, what you accomplished, what maybe is on your to-do list that you didn't get done. And then based on that, set your goals for the next day, or put together your Post-it note for the next day.
Well,
So weekly review, daily review.
one of the hacks from my anti-planner is to do, instead of a to-do list, it's the ta-da list, to recognize all the things at the end of the day that you did get done. And I found that very helpful, Because like, I didn't get anything done. No, that's not true. You actually
Absolutely.
did. And here's everything that you got done. So
Yes, I think that's such a good point, Sharon. And that's one of the things that when people do time tracking, that they often they feel like, wow, I always feel like at the end of the day I didn't get anything done, or because there's always things we didn't get done, but they feel great about all that they did get done. And that's powerful. This is another one that I struggle with, but it's sort of that focus thing that we talked about. And so Cal Newport, I've heard him on lots of podcasts and things lately, but his big thing is deep work. And he says, so focus is a challenge across our society. It's really, people are finding it hard to focus for very long. And so he talks about if we can train ourselves to do that, if we can work on that ability to focus without distraction, that will be a superpower in the future. So that his goes, I think, beyond maybe, I don't think he mentions the Pomodoro, but he talks about the need to like have good big chunks of time where we focus on one thing and one thing only. So I think a lot of times this just does not work in libraries, because again, people are using the library and we're responsive to that. But I think when you have certain big projects or things that are coming up, or just doing planning for the year ahead, or putting together other plans, I think it's important that we have the ability to do this and to work on developing this within ourselves. And because it's something that we just don't have. Yeah, good. Okay, so any of those, as you look at those, any that you think you would like to try or talk about with somebody else, or
I was
any
trying
that
to
you'd
figure out
like
what my
to?
numbering was off. What's the GTD in basket, number 5?
That's the get it out of your head.
Oh, get it
So
out of your head. Okay, thank you.
he has a desk job. So he sits at a desk, and if something comes up that's more than 2 minutes, he like either jots it down or does something and literally puts it in that in basket. What I find with people working in libraries is a lot of times they're up and about, and so you could put it in a phone if you have some way of capturing it in a phone, but there's still some weirdness about phones on public spaces in the library. So what I know people who like to have some sort of a little paper notebook where they jot things down. So
I email myself.
email yourself. Yes, my husband calls himself and leaves himself a voicemail. So I think just finding a way to capture those things. It can be a good idea. It doesn't always have to be an to do. It can be a good idea you have, or something you want to follow up on and you want to be sure not to forget. So, or something you just want to research more, or anything like that. Okay. I personally really love the Eisenhower matrix. I know that's probably sort of nerdy, but it really helps me think about those things, how I am spending my time, and knowing about myself, at least, that more time I spend working on things that are my goals and priorities, that the more satisfied I feel about what I'm accomplishing. Okay, so again, all of this is unique depending upon your personality, your job. I think it's great to talk about time management. It's so important, but also recognizing that we are also individual with this. So, for example, bullet journals. I don't know if anyone's ever tried a bullet journal, but those are something that works so well for some people, and they really like it and they get really creative with it, and other people don't. So I think recommending things, talking about things, but also recognizing that we're just so individual. And again, that it's not just about being more productive, but we're not robots. We are human beings with energy levels and feelings. And so really thinking about what contributes to our sense of well-being is important too. Little steps, and we don't need to dramatically change everything, but just look for those places where a little change could make a difference. And then I think it's good to talk about this. It's good. So then if you're trying the Pomodoro, if you've talked about the Pomodoro, again, you can explain it to someone, but also just, I think, making it clear that this is something that we're all working on. And that's something I've learned too, is that even people it seems like their time management flows very well for them, that often they have certain strategies that they're using, or they can feel overwhelmed at times too. So we can learn from each other. And I think it also gets us to think, because I think we hear so frequently, we talk about, I'm so busy, I've been so busy, and that has such a different feel than I'm so productive. Those two things are very different in that. So again, that feels aspirational to me. I don't now say I'm so productive, but I do feel like I recognize that I don't want to just be feeling like I'm so busy, because to me that seems like I'm overwhelmed. I'm not in a good place with this. Where a little rolling along, juggling a number of things is fun and energizing to me, but being aware of that when it feels good is when I'm actually accomplishing things. Okay, so as we wrap up, I'll have you think about something you'd like to try or suggest to someone else. Anything come to mind?
I'm going to try deep work. I want to see if I can focus on something for longer than 10 minutes.
Yes, that seems like a great one. And not looking at your phone and not looking at your inbox, and I think that is just, I think so many of us are just so responsive to if you are at a desk job, you're so responsive to your email that as soon as, and there are things that we probably do need to check in I don't know what's even realistic, but we don't need to immediately respond to everything that comes up in our email. Time boxing, yes, I think that's been a big one. Eating more frogs, weekly, daily review, good. Good. Any questions, anything that you feel like is a challenge that we haven't really talked about, or you're just curious how other people, I think other people can impact our time management a lot too. And that's where talking about it can help, because often we're waiting for other people to reply to things, or we're waiting for people to do their part of the project. And so the more we can talk about this and have strategies and address when something isn't happening that needs to happen, I think the better too, because
Well, and
yeah,
as supervisors, giving your staff permission to say either, can you work the desk for me for this 25 minutes so I can work on this, plan a program, or just making sure that the staff knows that if they need to put up a sign that says, my earbuds are in, I'm concentrating, come back,
right.
that that's okay
Yes.
too.
Yes. I want people to do that. I want to know if they're trying to focus. I feel like so many people I work with that they're really nice and helpful. And so I'll frequently go to them with questions and things, but I want them to be able to somehow indicate to me if a different time would be better. I want them to be able to let me know that.
Sharon brought up procrastination. We call them dread lines here.
Uh-huh.
There's so many of us that are we need that urgency to get the job done, but at the same time, it causes anxiety and overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times we'll put up fake to do, like here's your artificial dread line so that you get started on it a week before.
Mm-hmm. That's a
So
good idea. Yeah, that's good. And so good that you're talking about all of this so that you can work on it together instead of that just being something that you are trying to do kind of under the radar to make things work for you. Anything else? I'm going to read this a little bit. Yeah, I love the time boxing because I think it makes us be realistic about what our capacity is, what we really have time to do. Another thing, so I like when people indicate to me when they're having focus time. I also love when people are aware of, for example, I went to the person who was in charge of youth programming and I had a training curriculum that I'd come across that looked really good and kind of fit with something we talked about. And she was like, this does look really good. Let's put this, and it was like for 6 months in the future, she said, let's put this on the calendar to talk about. But she knew that the youth services team did not have the capacity at that time. So I think being realistic about that and being willing to not say yes, right, let's do this right now, but to be realistic about when it would be a better fit. I think I appreciate that awareness too. Not only for yourself, but also if you have a team that you're working with, not wanting to help everybody have capacity to do the things that they're doing.
and strategic plans help. Most
Mm-hmm.
of us have public libraries.
Yes, help you prioritize, help you know what's in that. There's always endless possibilities, different things that we could work on. And so I do think they just help us focus in, be strategic. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. This has been fun. I always love talking about this and hearing what works for people and what they're trying. And there's just always new stuff to try. The deep focus is one that's, for me, been on my radar lately. So it's one that I've been trying to. And it's good. It's good stuff. And I feel like it is something that some strategies we might discover and then they'll stay the same for us for a long time. But also I feel like things always change, whether it's our job. So maybe you're someone retired and so you are taking on extra responsibilities for a while, or it's something in your personal life with your health or someone in your family or things like that. We never just continue on just the same. Things are always changing. So we'll need new strategies to make those things work.
Well, thank you so much, Brenda. Amy and I were already having a little side conversation going.
Ooh,
We need to have
good.
her come to a staff meeting for SEKLS.
That would be fun. Yes. Well, good luck, everybody. And thank you, Sharon, for having me do these. I always like talking about this, and I'd be happy to do more in the future. So
Well,
good
thank
luck.
you. These are fabulous. They are going to be recorded, so for everybody that's here, you can expect an email from Michelle that'll have the evaluation and your CE certificate and a link to the handout that Brenda has given us. So thank you so much for participating today and have a great day.
Thank you. Have a